Donald Trump thought he was making a power move. With his sweeping new tariffs, he promised to bring American jobs back, crush China's exports, and reclaim economic dominance. But within hours, a wave of backlash erupted, and at the center of it was Mark Carney, the former Bank of England governor and one of the world's most respected financial minds. Carney didn't hold back. In a scathing takedown, he called Trump's plan economically suicidal and warned that the tariffs could trigger a global recession, with the U.S. hit hardest. Trump, as expected, exploded. Now the world is watching. Has the former president miscalculated again? Or has he just accelerated America's financial decline? In January 2025, Donald Trump unveiled what he called his boldest economic reset yet, a universal 60% tariff on all Chinese imports, and a sweeping 10% tariff on imports from the rest of the world. It was marketed as the ultimate solution to protect American manufacturing and punish foreign competitors. But behind the campaign slogans and podium cheers, the financial world went into panic mode. Wall Street analysts were stunned. Economists across the globe issued warnings, and global trade partners, from Germany to South Korea, began recalculating their exposure to a protectionist America. But the loudest and most stinging reaction came from Mark Carney. Carney, who once served as governor for both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, released a public statement just 48 hours later. These tariffs are not a strategy. They're a blunt force mistake that will raise prices, cut jobs, and isolate the U.S. from the very supply chains it needs to survive. His critique was more than economic. It was structural. He pointed out that Trump's tariffs would force retaliatory taxes, drive up consumer costs, and fracture already strained global supply networks. Meanwhile, U.S. manufacturers who rely on foreign parts began lobbying behind the scenes, warning that the policy could cripple domestic production rather than save it. But Trump was unmoved. At a rally in Ohio, he doubled down. Globalists like Carney don't get it. I'm fighting for American workers, not foreign bankers. And just like that, the divide was clear. On one side, a former president with brute political force. On the other, a seasoned economist warning of economic disaster. Mark Carney didn't just critique Trump's tariff plan. He dismantled it piece by piece. In a special televised interview with the Financial Times, and later echoed on the BBC World Service, Carney delivered what many economists are now calling the Davos Doctrine on deglobalization, a powerful rebuttal to Trump's economic nationalism. His central argument? That Trump's tariffs weren't just bad economics, they were a strategic threat to U.S. credibility in global markets. Tariffs of this scale don't protect the American economy, Carney said. They isolate it. They weaponize trade against allies and hand long-term influence to rivals like China. He outlined how the tariff shock would trigger inflation, strain dollar liquidity, and accelerate the global shift away from U.S.-centric trade systems. But it wasn't just what he said. It was who he said it in front of. Global finance ministers, central bankers, and corporate CEOs all watching live at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The audience response? A rare standing ovation. Carney, once known for his diplomatic tone, made it clear. Trump's approach is outdated, unsustainable, and economically dangerous. He warned that retaliatory measures from China, the EU, and even Canada could reduce U.S. GDP by up to 2% annually, not including the damage from inflation and capital flight. Inside the White House and among Trump loyalists, the reaction was explosive. The former president reportedly raged during a closed-door meeting, accusing Carney of trying to undermine American sovereignty and labeling the speech a globalist ambush. But outside the political bubble, the message was clear. Carney had said what many were afraid to, and he had facts to back it up. Carney's warning wasn't rooted in politics, it was grounded in economics. According to him, Trump's tariff agenda suffers from a fatal misunderstanding of modern trade. Global supply chains aren't national. They're interconnected ecosystems. A single car assembled in Michigan might rely on semiconductors from Taiwan, lithium from Chile, and steel components from Japan. Slapping blanket tariffs on those imports doesn't protect jobs. It drives up production costs, forces layoffs, and triggers outsourcing. Carney pointed out that American consumers would feel the pain first. Higher import costs mean more expensive groceries, electronics, and clothing. Inflation, already a major concern, would spike again, just as the Fed tries to stabilize the economy. Worse, Carney argued, is the long-term damage to trust. Trading partners burned by sudden tariffs may start shifting away from dollar-based contracts. That means more trade in yuan, euro, and regional currencies, accelerating the very de-dollarization trend that threatens U.S. global influence. He concluded with a stark warning. The last time the U.S. tried tariff nationalism, it led to the Great Depression. Let's not repeat history with a digital twist. To Carney, Trump's tariffs don't just hurt the economy, they erode U.S. leadership, credibility, and leverage. Trump's tariff announcement didn't just rattle economists, it sent shockwaves through global capitals. Key U.S. allies like Germany, Canada, and South Korea responded with swift condemnation, warning that the new trade regime would destabilize global supply chains and trigger retaliatory tariffs. The European Union immediately called for emergency talks, hinting at countermeasures targeting American tech and agricultural exports. Canada's trade minister described Trump's move as economic self-harm disguised as patriotism, while Japan's Ministry of Finance warned of a severe disruption to regional trade balance. Markets weren't calm either. The S&P 500 dipped 3% within 48 hours of the announcement, while manufacturing stocks with overseas exposure tumbled across Wall Street. The U.S. dollar weakened as investors began bracing for trade retaliation and slower growth. Meanwhile, China, though restrained in tone, quietly expanded its yuan-based trade settlement network, inviting frustrated partners to bypass U.S. systems entirely. Beijing didn't need to retaliate directly. It let America isolate itself. The global response sent one message loud and clear. If the U.S. closes its doors, the rest of the world will find another way in. As Trump's tariff strategy ripples across the globe, the U.S. economy is already showing signs of strain. Importers are scrambling to renegotiate contracts, domestic manufacturers are bracing for rising input costs, and consumers, the backbone of American growth, are facing yet another wave of price hikes. According to a new report from the Congressional Budget Office, if the tariffs remain in place, the U.S. could lose over 500,000 jobs within the next 18 months, mostly in manufacturing, logistics, and retail. Inflation, which had shown signs of cooling, could spike above 4.5%, forcing the Federal Reserve to delay rate cuts and risk a broader slowdown. Meanwhile, small and mid-sized businesses, many of whom rely on foreign suppliers, are expected to suffer the most. With input costs rising and global demand shrinking, many may be forced to downsize or shut down altogether. Add to that the looming threat of retaliatory tariffs on U.S. exports, and America's trade position becomes more vulnerable than ever. Trump promised economic strength, but the early signs suggest turbulence, and Carney's prediction of a self-inflicted wound may already be coming true. Tariffs may sound like strength on the campaign trail, but in the real world of global economics, they're blunt instruments, and Trump just swung hard. But this time, he may have struck a nerve he can't repair. Mark Carney didn't just offer criticism. He offered a warning backed by history, data, and decades of financial leadership. His message was clear. Isolation in the modern economy is not power. It's weakness disguised as defiance. Now the world is recalibrating. Allies are reconsidering their trade ties, markets are signaling distress, and China, watching from the sidelines, is quietly filling the void America is leaving behind. The question isn't whether Trump's tariffs will make headlines, they already have. The real question is, will they make America stronger or simply accelerate its decline as a global leader? Because when the dust settles, this won't just be about trade wars or inflation. It will be about whether the world still believes the U.S. understands how to lead. Or if it's simply reacting to a world it no longer controls. So here's the question we leave you with. Is Trump fighting for America or fighting against the future?